Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I wanted to put on this interview town hall forum so that students can get to know their university administrators, get to know who's making these decisions. And so I think we should begin by going around doing some introductions, and we should probably start with the man who needs no introduction, President Wingard.
Thank you, Bradley, very much.
Of course.
My name is Dr. Jason Wingard. I am president here at Temple University. Thank you again for welcoming us the opportunity to share some insights here today.
Of course.
Thank you. I'm Gregory Mandel. I joined the faculty here 15 years ago and now serve as provost of the university.
I'm Ken Kaiser, Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and a proud graduate of Temple University.
Hi, I'm Valerie Harrison, Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I'm a two-time Temple Made grad.
I'm Charlie Leone, Executive Director of Public Safety. I'm also a homegrown Temple guy. Been here 36 years and a two-time Temple graduate as well.
And I'm Sean Abbott, Vice Provost for Admissions, Financial Aid, and Enrollment Management.
Great. And I want to thank the university, thank your team, thank Strategic Marketing and Communications for being so helpful as we put this on. My name is Bradley Smutek. I am the president of Temple Student Government. I am a current senior history major and an incoming 1L at the James E. Beasley School of Law here at Temple University. Thank you. Great, so I just have some questions for y'all. We glean those from students, from parents, from Temple Student Government, and so we'll just get right in. The first one is for you, President Wingard. You've been in your position for almost a year now. What have you learned during your first year at Temple University, either through triumph or through turbulence, that has changed your perspective and your approach to your position?
Well, first of all, Bradley, thank you again for allowing us to share with the students some of our perspectives and learnings. As far as my question around what have I learned, I've learned that the Temple community is resilient. And I'm not just saying that, I know we say that a lot. Perseverance and grit is an edict that we say around here at Temple, but it does ring true for me coming in from the outside. We are certainly resilient. This has been an unprecedented year. And so I've been here for 8.5 months, and there has been no time like this at Temple with COVID, with violence pandemic around the country, with mental health that's been affected by that, so global wars. So we are in a period where there is a lot of anxiety, there is a lot of fear, there is a lot of unsettledness about what the next day holds. And we as a community have been, I'm so proud that we as a community have come together. And in order to showcase that resilience, we have figured out how to collaborate, how to coordinate, how to express joy with one another, how to be loving. And I can say that because it's not always that way. And because of that, we have been able to have this year, save for a couple of weeks, a very normal experience, a normal-like experience. And people have adapted. We have been able to pivot in unison. Our infection rates for COVID are less than 1% as of today. That's phenomenal, right? And that's only because of all of you being able to give us the feedback, follow our guidance, follow our laws, and be able to adjust in the way that we needed to. So my experience has been a good one. It allows us to focus on a couple of things that are really important, if I may. So number one, core to our mission here at Temple is access. And so if we are not making sure that we are making this educational experience, this excellent educational experience available to all, then we're not satisfying our mission, Bradley. And so we want to make sure that our students, all who want to attend, have the ability to have access. We have to make sure that the resources are available to student populations who want to come here so that we can maintain the diversity and inclusion that is core to who we are at Temple University. We also want to make sure that we are embodying and modeling the future of learning and work. Right. So what that means is, and you and I have talked a lot about this, we ought to make sure that the modalities we use, how we teach, is a model for all other institutions of higher education, that we're changing the way we do that. Why? So that when you graduate from Temple, you are prepared to go into the workforce, law school first at Beasley, and then you are prepared to go into the workforce equipped to undertake the skills and competencies that the workforce is looking for. We have to make sure that we're doing that, right? Number three, who's doing that teaching? Our faculty. Our faculty are not just teaching what somebody else wrote, what somebody else researched. They are actually doing the active discovery themselves. So we want to make sure that we are also providing the resources so that our faculty are the thought leaders in their respective areas, and then they are teaching that thought leadership to our students so that our students are able to actually meet the demands of the workplace. And the last thing I'll say about what I'm impressed by and where we're focused is on engagement. And so we have a lot of stakeholders in the world that Temple University touches on a daily basis. And because of how excellent we are, we want to make sure that those relationships with all those stakeholders are really strong and shored up. So whether you're talking about the students or the faculty or the staff who work here or alumni, donors, corporate sponsors, the media, all of those stakeholders, fans of our games, need to be engaged and touched in a regular way so that everybody knows who Temple is, what Temple represents, why the value proposition is strong, and why you should get on board and be part of this ecosystem.
Great. Well, thank you for that answer. I can say in your first year here, our students have been incredibly impressed with just how student-focused you are. You know, you're at the Bell Tower, you're at Bury Beach with those students, and they love
Bury
that.
Beach,
You're
that's right.
interrupting classes, they love that. I wish you would interrupt mine every once in a while. It's, that was very nice.
I appreciate
so
that.
Thank you for that.
you.
The next question is for you, Charlie. Discussions of campus safety have obviously been on everybody's minds, prevalent on all members of the Temple community. How's the university approaching making students feel safer?
Yeah, we're going from a few different approaches. One in particular is that strong partnership. And again, and to underscore Dr. Wingard's talking about stakeholders, our stakeholders are everyone from university community like you and Temple student government to our community being our neighbors that are nearby the campus. And together we're working to reduce any of these incidents that we're seeing that's happening around the city and near the campus. And for us, it's that's a strong partnership with the City of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Police. Redoubling our efforts with the supplemental patrols, our investigative teams working with their investigative teams, our leadership meeting almost daily, to talking through what are the issues, what do we need to do, how do we direct our resources to be the most efficient and effective out there to reduce what's happening. And we can't do any of it without our neighbors. Our neighbors have been great, they've been strong, they've been helpful. And just being in our special district, just seeing the pride in our neighboring community of taking care of our property, keeping things clean, and just that we're all on the same page and that we want this community to be very vibrant.
Right. And follow-up from Temple Family Council, what can parents and families do to help improve campus safety, be supportive of their students and the university regarding these efforts?
Well, I think the parents have been great. From the council to our parents that have been writing in and giving us feedback, I think all of that is helpful for us to be better. I also think that parents can help us a lot with educating their students that are here. We try, and we know we try constantly with orientations, but sometimes we come from a parent and maybe heard differently. And for us to be on the same page about talking about some of the safety awareness strategies that we have, and I would ask that parents take a look at our website.
Right.
We have a section called Safety Awareness Strategies, and it really can give you some good ideas on what you can do to talk with your student to help each other to be safe.
Yeah. Now, this semester, the university announced that they were hiring an external auditor regarding campus safety. Why did the university think that was important to do?
Well, I think it's always good to do a self-assessment, and it's always good to bring someone in to do an assessment. And for us, it was the right time for us to have someone that is highly regarded in the law enforcement community, has been tapped into by President Obama, and has a lot of ideas and is very much part of the 21st century policing culture. And that's what we want to see here. So it made sense for us to bring in Charles Ramsey and his team in 21CP Solutions, and for them to take a good deep dive into us and what are we doing? What are our policies, our processes? How do we engage with our community? Can we do focus groups and get a lot of feedback from our community? Look at the best practices that are out here. Is there something that we need to do that maybe we're not? And I think it's the best to have someone come in with a fresh set of eyes, also offer us counsel for an ongoing basis so it's not a one and done, so that not only we're going to implement recommendations, but to have it continue on.
Great, thank you for that. My next question is for you down there, Valerie. As we all know, Temple is located in historic North Philadelphia, and concerns about the relationship between the university and the community have been consistent for years. Have you and other administrators met with community leaders, and how can the university improve our relationship with the community?
Yes, Brad. Our team, our community affairs team, meets regularly and formally with community leaders, both from the east and west sides of Broad Street, throughout several times actually throughout the semester. We also meet with individual residents to address individual needs. We meet with school administrators, shout out to Dunbar, Temple Maid administrators, as well as rec center administrators and faith-based leaders in an effort to meet the needs of neighbors and constituents, but also to hear from them so they're informing our work. You know, notably, we are working and meet every week with the Church of the Advocate and some of our most vocal critics to develop an academic enrichment program for neighborhood youth. You know the value of our elected officials. You just heard, and you were there with us as we celebrated a $1.3 million gift that we got from the governor's office because of the efforts of our state senator Sharif Street and Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. But more informally and socially, we get together. We have a holiday party this past December. We had a holiday party, and as you heard, in February, we had a concert that brought together over 800 residents and students and staff and faculty members for an evening of jazz, which was an incredible time. So we are working regularly and constantly in order to build trust, right? And not only are we trying to help meet the needs of our community, but we want to be informed by their views and opinions and perspectives.
Great. And what can students do to help bridge that gap?
Okay, shout out to Steph Ives and goodneighbor.temple.edu. So there is an incredible website that we have that lists the types of things that students can do to sort of close the gap. It ranges everything from say hello to your neighbors when you move in, put your trash out on trash day, to things, you know, if you have a neighbor who's carrying bags in groceries, sort of volunteer to help. Use local businesses. Use CVS here to get your prescriptions filled. Help a young person on your block with homework. Learn about the rich history of this community so that your perspective about the community is informed, again, by the richness of the history at the Church of the Advocate and other places in the community. And so the website, I cannot say it enough, it provides a number of suggestions, I think, that we think go a long way in helping us to sort of close that gap between the community and the university.
Great. Thank you for that. The next question is for Sean, who I want to congratulate for a very successful and insightful Washington Post op-ed a few weeks ago. The Philadelphia Inquirer released an article in January of this year saying that the share of black students at Temple fell by more than half since 1999. The university released a response saying that this is a trend that ended 5 years ago and acknowledging that there's work to be done. Could you elaborate on how the university is going to, quote, move the needle, as that response states?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, Brad, that reading that article was really difficult for a lot of folks that do the work on my team in the admissions office and in the financial aid office. But I can't argue that the article was factually incorrect. I mean, if you actually look at the data that was referenced in the article, we did have a slide in the number of black students that were enrolled at Temple. But you know, I think our colleagues at Temple wisely pointed out that a lot of what was reported in that data did stop 5 years ago, and we've had remarkable change in the last 5 years. And you know, I can rattle off a number of different initiatives that have helped move the needle, so to speak, but I'll just kind of zero on a couple that I think have helped change the landscape or change the kind of demographic composition of our student body in a pretty major way. First and foremost, Temple became the first public research university in the Northeast to become test optional in its admission process. And that's something that we did long before the pandemic really required that most of the college universities in America become test optional. And just removing that barrier alone 6-7 years ago has really helped us change the kind of demographic composition of our student body. I'm hopeful students and parents and families are well aware that we have a number of new programs at Temple that we've launched over the past couple of years. We have the new Cecil B. Moore Scholars Program, which aims to cultivate talent in the 8 zip codes that surround the main gates of our campus. We have the Broad Street Finish Line Grant Program, which is a scholarship program that is really a retention program for students that are first-generation college students in the city of Philadelphia. We have a new diversity initiatives and community relations team that is embedded within the admissions office, and a commitment where we are really making a valiant attempt to visit every single high school in the city of Philadelphia on an annual basis, either through an off-campus program or an off-campus program. We have really consciously moved towards recruiting a more ethnically diverse frontline admissions team so that the students that we're meeting with in high schools and community-based organizations actually see admission officers that are responsible for reviewing their applications, look a lot more like them than they did maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And then the last thing that I would want students and families to be aware of is that we've really, I think, revolutionized our evaluation process and our selection process. And in the absence of standardized testing, really started to pay attention to other variables and other credentials that students submit as part of their application materials to cultivate a more diverse student body. So now, more than ever before, we focus on your academic performance rather than your standardized testing. We look at the extracurricular impact that you've had in your communities. We reward you for part-time job responsibilities and family responsibilities. And we pay attention to so many more other variables and credentials in the admission process that have enabled us to recruit and enroll a much more diverse student body. And if you look at the data that stopped where that article reported and where we are right now, our student of color population has grown from 31% to 45%. Wow. And in the last 2 years, just in the last 2 years alone, we've enrolled the largest black student community that we've ever enrolled and the largest Latina and Latino student community that we've ever enrolled. And if things progress towards the next year and looking at our application volume this year, we could set a third record.
Wow.
So.
Thank you for that. I'm excited to see what the future holds in terms of those initiatives. Next question is for Ken. Governor Wolf's proposed budget includes an increase in funding for Temple University. There are rumors that this increased funding could lead to a tuition freeze for in-state students. If there are discussions about a tuition freeze, would the same freeze be considered for our out-of-state students who are paying a much higher rate to attend?
First, Bradley, thank you for setting this up, and I do want to set the record straight. We are somewhat competitive with one another, and I'm a 3-time Temple graduate. So, what I would say on that front is nothing's been decided at this point. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Ultimately, the board will consider a recommendation on a tuition increase in July. And so some of the work that has to be done between now and then is really looking at our potential new resources. So when you look at revenue at Temple, it's tied not only to tuition, but enrollment is really the most important. And then other sources of possible revenue, grant revenue, fundraising, things of that nature. But expenses play a key part as well. And we know inflation right now is running at about 7%. In addition to that, we have 11 bargaining units. All of them have contracts and increases embedded in those contracts. And we plan to honor those contracts. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that the Commonwealth only provides about 12% of the university's overall budget. So a 5% increase on 12%, you have 88% that you still need to consider. So while we welcome a 5% increase, we still need to look to that 88% as well. We wouldn't look at that 88% and expect students to make all of that up. And as evidence of that, in the past 2 years alone, we've really looked for efficiencies and reduced the budget $74 million. We are at a point that reducing the budget significantly more would result probably in less services and less opportunities for students. So we really want to balance that. And some evidence of that, right now we are members of an academic benchmarking consortium. It's about 80 public universities in that group. And based on the last full year of data, we are the 4th most efficient administrative university. So we've done a lot to shield students from increases. And as President Wingard began the session, affordability is really a key focus of all of us and of the board. And so to your point, we've held tuition flat twice for in-state students since 2020 and once for out-of-state students. We'd love to do that every year. It's not likely something we can do and keep Temple, you know, a place that students would want to come to. And when we do increase tuition, we try to keep it as responsible as possible. Over roughly, since about 2017, the average increase has been only around 2.3%. So that's a long way of saying nothing's been decided yet, and I don't want to set an expectation that a 0 is likely. It's probably not likely this year.
Right. So we need students to know that it's a bit more complex than they might think. Enrollment or benchmarking, et cetera. All these factors play into those decisions.
That's absolutely right.
Great, thank you for that. When you, President Wingard, testified to the Senate in Harrisburg, you said that, quote, mental health is the biggest crisis that we are facing on campus, and it affects everything we're doing now. We are working feverishly to be able to invest in an infrastructure that can provide the necessary level of mental health support. So this question is for you, Provost Mandel. What are the plans that the university has to enhance the current support systems on campus to support the mental health and well-being of its students, staff, and faculty?
Thanks, Brad. And before I answer the question, let me first thank you for serving as president of TSG this year. We've had some interesting conversations about leadership over the year, and while it isn't always easy, and we all know that, it's extremely rewarding, and we all appreciate, deeply appreciate your willingness to serve your fellow students and the university. So thank you. And as the former dean of the law school, I'm thrilled that you'll be going over there as a first year next year. So no, your question about mental health is a critical one, and I certainly share President Wingard's opinion expressed in that statement. We're dealing with a crisis society-wide around mental health and wellness, and I've seen this in many of the students around campus, in many faculty members, in many staff, and as someone who has 2 college-age children myself, in their peer group and with them, the degree of difficulty in dealing with these challenges is quite extreme. I think that was all true before the pandemic, and then it's only been exacerbated since then. The isolation, the uncertainty of the time, the concern about physical health during that time has all made it harder for people. And so we need to make sure that we're doing as much as possible to support our entire community in dealing with these concerns around mental health and well-being during this time. It's support that we want to provide to every member of the community. It's a key part of the access that we intend to provide as a university. And so we've been working on a couple of things. One is that, as you're aware, we're involved in a strategic planning process, and we're partway through that. We're working on wrapping it up, and we'll be developing a number of initiatives. But as we've been doing that, some areas of need are so significant and have been raised by so many different stakeholders, so many different constituencies, that we thought it was important to jump on the ball right away, so to speak, and get started, because we know they will be part of the strategic plan. We don't need to wait till the end of the process. And so mental health is one of those, and as I think you know, last month we stood up a task force on mental health and wellness. It's populated, it's chaired by Melanie Cosby, who is at the medical school at the Lewis Katz School of Medicine and serves in a diversity, equity, and inclusion role there, as well as by Dan Berman, who's the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Studies. And the task force is populated with a number of faculty in different disciplines who are experts in this area. It's populated with a number of staff across the university who work in these fields, as well as students, and we reached out for some recommendations around students as well. And so the task force has been charged to tackle this difficult challenge and provide recommendations, and in particular to take a look at everything we're already doing institution-wide in this space, do a little bit of a baseline look at peer and aspirant universities, identify which universities out there seem to have the best approaches around mental well-being now, take advice from them, learn from them, and then once they sort of provide that baseline about where we are and where others are, make recommendations. And those recommendations, that we've asked for include areas where we might better integrate or coordinate services that we're already providing, a prioritized list of what either new services we should stand up or services that we have that we need to build on and provide better resources for, and then also recommendations around communication about what we're doing, because of course it's not useful, or it's only half useful, to stand up services but not have everybody know that they're available. So that's what the task force is doing. We're looking at them to provide recommendations in phases, so that as we identify things, we can start to move on them as soon as possible, and that will take place over time, of course. And then another piece of the equation is that I've asked a separate group to take a look at various policies and procedures that we have connected with our academic programming, where we might be able to alleviate certain concerns around mental well-being or wellness. So as just one example, one of the things they're looking at is wellness days, which we added a year ago during the pandemic semester in spring of 2021, and taking a look for the fall semester about whether it might be worth piloting that again on a more regular basis or testing it out, and then we'll see whether that holds. But that's just one example of looking at other policies or procedures in that regard. So, you know, we're trying to approach it very thoughtfully, but with diligent speed.
Great. I agree with you, President Wingard. Mental health is the most recurring issue I hear from students, and so I appreciate that the university is taking such a comprehensive look at our policies relating to mental health, and I appreciate the opportunity to nominate students for those task forces that were recently impaneled, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of those task forces, and students love wellness days, so I'm excited to see the outcome of that as well. President Wingard, heading into the future, what are your top priorities as president for Temple University?
Well, I mentioned them at the onset. So the four that I mentioned when we first started this conversation: access, certainly, preparing our students for the future of work, making sure that our faculty are uniquely prepared to be active discoverers of new knowledge and research. You know, and then number four, making sure that we as a university community and ecosystem are engaged with all the stakeholders that are most important. So those were the four priorities that I have consistently been focused on. It marries the strategic planning process that Provost Mandel talked about earlier. So those are core to our mission. Those are responsible for our faculty and for our students, and how we are preparing to engage with our broader community. Those are my priorities.
Right, and something during the pandemic happened where I think sometimes with quarantine and online classes, we sort of lost a lot of that college experience. And I think right now there are a lot of students wondering what they should be getting out of this experience. How can they be engaged with those priorities? And so what is your top recommendation for how students can get a value from this learning experience, stay engaged with the university, and get a job of the future, as you said?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as we prepare for the end of this academic year, a lot of students, a lot of your peers have been asking me, you know, what should we be thinking about, President Wingard, as we move forward? And so my call to action to you and to other seniors who are graduating this year is threefold. So number one is to make sure that you're getting the full value. I know it's the end of your term, and this applies to those of you students who are not graduating as well. You have advisors here, counselors that are world-class, faculty who you can get expertise from and counseling from as well. You have a group of peers who come from this region, around the nation, around the world, who are accessible and a great resource. You know, we have alumni here, we have coaches, we have staff and administrators, we have a senior team here. All of these resources are available through an experience here at Temple University that is unparalleled. So getting value out of this education, the money you spent, the time you spent, is really important as number one call to action for you all. It's not something that we just give, it's something that you have to take as well. So getting value, number one. Number two, get a job. Right? So we are doing everything we can, as I said before, the curriculum, the modalities, the research that we're encouraging our faculty to introduce in new discovery ways. We want to make sure, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that you're prepared with the skills, competencies, and knowledge to be able to get a job of the future, to be able to keep a job of the future, to be able to make a difference and represent Temple really well, one time, two times, or three times over, right? And so we expect that of our students. You're not here just to learn and to have a good time, although we want to make sure that you have a good, joyful experience. The whole goal here that you set to and that we set to was to be able to make sure that you get a good job that's a leader in industry, whatever you choose, you know, in our market economy. And then the third thing is to get engaged. So we have students who we encourage to be fully engaged while they're here in clubs and in practicums and in different classes and social experiences. But that's the start of it. The extension of that, you're going to spend more time outside of Temple than inside of Temple. So getting engaged means being an active alum. Get involved in the club or the alumni organization in the city in which you live. Come back to homecoming. Participate in some of the online social groups. Give money when you can and when you're at a place. Hire back our students. When you are the employer, you can come back and hire. So all the different ways that alumni can engage with this university community make us that much richer, make us better, make us excellent in the way that we are. It's not just Temple looking one way, that what is it that we senior leaders, what is it we as faculty members can do for the student population, and how can staff serve the student population? It's students taking advantage of all that, expecting more, and then when you transition to the other side, reaching back in and engaging to help us with the students who are here, with the community members that surround us, with the faculty members who need new access to research. All of that goes around in a circle in a way that if we can get everybody engaged in that way, then it elevates Temple to an excellent level, more so than where we are right now.
Great. Well, President Wingard, everybody else, thank you so much for doing this today. I'm very hopeful for the future of our university. I think students can have a lot of trust in your leadership, and so I'm looking forward to that, and I want to thank you all for being here today.
Well, as Provost Mandel said, Bradley, we appreciate your leadership this year. It has been an unprecedented and difficult year.
Yes, it
and
has.
So we thank you for the communication, opportunities like this to share our experiences. We wish you well in your transition, but we also wish you to continue to engage the student population for the remainder of the year. And when you get into Beasley, continue to do it that way too, because my last point, engagement is really critical. We can only do so much, so we need you to help us to be able to make that transition. So thank you for doing this today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay.